And now on the line is Tony Duffin, CEO of the Ana Liffey Drug Project. Tony, welcome to the programme.
Good morning, Darren. Hope you're well.
Tony, I know the International Overdose Day was marked recently. We have a number of issues related to drug use to get through in our interview today. Could you start off by telling me how the marking of International Overdose Day went for you in Ana Liffey this year, Tony? And then tell me how big of a problem is overdosing on drugs today, do you find, in Ana Liffey?
Okay. Well, it was International Overdose Awareness Day on the 31st of August last week. And as the name suggests, it's an international awareness day, so it's marked across the globe. And online, you see it on social media. If people have a look for the hashtag IOAD 2021, they'll see that there was quite a lot of activity across the world. But in Ireland and for us at Ana Liffey, other agencies obviously marked it as well. But for ourselves at Ana Liffey, we did a couple of things. We had a mural about carry naloxone. Naloxone for listeners is the medication that stops opiates working, essentially, at least for a short time, at least for about 20 minutes, and it's a drug that people are able to administer to people that they find, who they believe to be overdosing. It only works on opiates, but actually opiates are implicated in many of the overdose deaths in Ireland. So it's an important tool. So we put a lovely mural up in Limerick on the side of a local business called Canteen in Limerick City Centre, and we worked with the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum on that and other partners, including the agency that actually painted the mural, which was great. And it was called Draw Out in Limerick, and we obviously had to abide by COVID rules, but we had a small gathering to mark the unveiling of the naloxone mural in the Midwest, which was great. And then in Dublin, one of the main things we did was we launched a mobile harm reduction unit, which we call the Ana Liffey. The service users know it as the Ana Liffey, and it's a service that is designed to. It's an ambulance that was donated to us by Lifeline Ambulance Service, and we're supported by HSE CH09. They helped us to rewrap the vehicle, so it's less obviously an ambulance and a little more discreet, and it's able to go into areas where drug use is a problem, and engage with people who use drugs, in the public domain, and to engage with them. We can do our needle and syringe program. We can do interventions around safer injection practice. We can do referrals for everything from in terms of homelessness and housing. We can do things around social welfare. We can do things. We can make referrals around other stabilisation programs for addiction, treatment and rehabilitation. So quite a lot there is possible. I suppose we would do these services naturally on a fixed site basis in and around Dublin and indeed in the Midwest of Ireland, but also on a backpacking basis. But this gives us a great space, a clinical space indeed, where we can go into an area and improve things not only for the people who we engage with, but for the area as well. Because obviously it's important that such a service doesn't do any further harms or anything like that. That actually improves the situation in the location. So they were the two sort of major things we did. In Dublin, also there was the Lord Mayor lit the Mansion House up in purple. The Department of Health, they lit up the Mansion House in purple to mark Overdose Awareness Day, and the conference centre was lit up in purple as well. And that was all done by there's a number of agencies like the HSE and other agencies who are working on this. So that's great, I suppose the theme of the International Overdose Awareness Day was time to remember, time to act. And what that means is that that we're remembering those people we've lost, the tragedy that is fatal overdose, but also that time to act, as it suggests, there is more that we can all do to reduce the risks of overdose. Because when you think about it, an overdose is a premature death. People have passed away prematurely. So that's International Overdose Awareness Day. And in Ireland, the latest statistics are from 2017. So we know that there are the equivalent of one overdose death a day in Ireland. Now, those overdose deaths do include alcohol, but it is still a very significant number in terms of illicit drug use. And indeed, if you look at it from the point of view of drug-related deaths, so widening it out beyond overdose, so deaths by trauma where drugs have been involved, then you're looking at the equivalent of 2 deaths a day. So it's a very, very significant problem. And of course, overdose is obviously the biggest tragedy and the biggest harm is fatal overdose, where someone has died. But there are harms associated to non-fatal overdoses. So people can do physical damage to themselves. It can be cognitive function, so brain damage. It can be damage to the lungs or other organs. And I think that people need to be aware of that it's not just simply a matter of life or death. It's actually harm that can happen to people who do overdose, and especially people who experience multiple overdoses. And every near miss is an indicator to somebody that they're at great risk of having a fatal overdose. So Darren, I know you're well aware. We talked before. It's a very, very serious situation, and there is much more we can do. But we are doing collectively and in partnership with the statutory agencies, with the other NGOs. We're all doing more, but there's always more that can be done to try and reduce it.
Okay, it's great that you have that vehicle now, and it's a great idea to have the mural in Limerick, I believe what you said it was, and it's great that to hear that International Overdose Awareness Day got great publicity this year as well. Okay, we'll move on a bit. I saw the RT primetime report on crack cocaine use in Ballymun a couple of months ago, and I read Kitty Holland's article on drug use in the city centre of Dublin in the Irish Times a month or two ago. Also, I have personally been aware of the existence of crack cocaine for a good few years, but I'm led to believe that it's only in the last few years that the drug has really grown big time in Ireland. Could you tell me if I am right, Tony, and then give me a summary of the crack cocaine and related problems issue in Ireland today as you are finding it amongst your clients?
Okay, so I mean, I think crack cocaine has been with us for quite some time, and certainly, I've been working in Dublin since 2000, and I can say, say around 15 years ago, people were saying to me, is crack a big issue? And it wasn't, it wasn't, but it was always there. In amongst, because we have a poly-drug use problem in Ireland, so we have problems with street tablets and heroin and cocaine and crack cocaine, and then way more beyond that when you look at the former head shop drugs, the new psychoactive substances. So we have a raft of drugs that people are using and at risk, put themselves at risk of in terms of poly-drug use. But crack cocaine, yes, crack cocaine it's acknowledged now. Is a significant problem in Ireland, particularly amongst our client groups. So, crack cocaine would be commonly known for being an issue amongst people who have problematic drug use. People who, some people might say addicted or dependent, but chaotic lifestyles, etc. So, that's the cohort of people we're talking about. But then again, cocaine is rife right across the country. So cocaine powder, and then you've got crack cocaine as well. And yeah, I think it is a big issue. The risks that people face, there's harms that can be done to the body by smoking crack. So the one that springs to mind is scarring of the lungs. People may not realise that smoking crack damages your lungs. Also, smoking crack pipes, you can crack your lips, which makes your lips bleed. If you are sharing pipes, then there is a risk of hepatitis C, particularly. So these are kind of immediate ones that come to mind around the risks. There's also behavioural risks. You're putting yourself at risk in terms of behaviour associated to smoking crack. And I think the response to crack, first and foremost, has to be a harm reduction response initially. Engaging with people around crack and explaining to them the harms that they put themselves at risk of, and how to mitigate those harms. We give out crack pipes on our needle exchange, and we know from giving those out that the increase in the amount of people wanting crack pipes is an indicator to us that there is more crack being smoked as well. But we give out those crack pipes with detachable mouthpieces, little rubber mouthpieces, and obviously we tell people not to share those mouthpieces. And the reason is the rubber mouthpiece helps not to crack your lips, but also not to share those rubber mouthpieces or indeed crack pipes. And the filters do help somewhat with the scarring of the lungs, although it removes the scarring of the lungs. So there's the harm, and always with harm reduction, there's the physical intervention that we do, which is giving people pipes and things in this example, but the engagement of people, our staff engaging with people, building a relationship, building up trust. Helping people to make healthier choices about their lifestyle, giving them opportunities for other referral pathways into treatment and rehabilitation. Because if we don't have a relationship with people, we don't have anything. And I think that harm reduction and the services that we provide does give that opportunity to build that to build that relationship, to encourage people to make healthier choices. And people will change their behaviours. They will look to progress. They might stabilise their drug use. They may go into detox and rehabilitation and become drug free. And actually, this month is Recovery Month, so it's really important to remember that that people do recover from using drugs in such a fashion, and that recovery is what people sort of what they describe to be recovery. So the idea of stabilisation or indeed abstinence. And sorry, I just thought that was important to move into talking about harm reduction and the building blocks that harm reduction gives people to move on.
From looking at that RTE Prime Time report a couple of months ago, it seems that Ballymun has a particular problem with crack cocaine. Is the problem of crack cocaine now becoming like heroin was in parts of Dublin over 20 years ago?
I think it is impacting on areas of deprivation, which would include, Ballymun. But I don't think it's fair to pick out Ballymun. There are areas of deprivation across Ireland. I think that you can take the experience in Ballymun as a microcosm of what's being experienced in other areas, not all areas, but other areas of Ireland. And I think that it's having an impact on those communities. The issue, I suppose, is crack is a drug, and if it's not crack, it's heroin. It's a symptom of other problems, really. And what we need for those communities, obviously, is a much more strategic and ongoing. There's been lots of work done over the years, but ongoing work. Like in the NEIC, the northeastern city of Dublin, there's been an emphasis there on improving things. And that's not just focused on drugs, it's focused on jobs and housing and meaningful occupation and such. So, it's a wider issue. But yes, I think the question is it having an impact on those communities? And the answer is yes. But it could be, drug trends change all the time. And it is a tragedy that crack has taken over, has become so popular, and is used so frequently. But I think that we've got problems with other drugs as well. And if the supply of say heroin increases in the years to come, then people will be talking about that. But the actual underlying issues remain the same.
Okay, we've discussed a couple of drugs. You mentioned cocaine as well. Okay, what are the drugs, Tony, or illegal drugs that are most common in Ireland today, and the ones that give your clients the most problems in your work?
Oh, legal drugs. Okay, so the ones that spring to mind, alcohol first and foremost. I think alcohol is causing difficulties for our client group. Obviously, people can purchase it over the counter as we all can, and alcohol is a harmful substance. When it's when it's consumed in large quantities, and we see a lot of that. The other ones that spring to mind would be prescribed drugs. Drugs that are like benzodiazepine and Suboxone and those type drugs. So what we would refer to as street tablets, and there's a big problem with that in Ireland. So street tablets are a major problem for our client group. They're not necessarily legal. They are prescribed over the counter, and obviously if a prescription is followed, then in that circumstance they are legal. But they are often sold on the streets, having been prescribed to one person and then being sold to another. That then therefore they're a controlled substance that has been moved into the illicit economy. And then there are the fake tablets that come through, and people think they're buying something that is a medicine, but actually they're buying something that has been produced perhaps in China or India. And these drugs cause difficulties. I think alcohol is just advertising for alcohol and such, which presents it in a very positive fashion because the industry wants to see its product sold. And then in terms of the street tablets, it's the perception that it's a medicine, and that people perceive it to be a safer option than, say, illicit drugs like heroin or crack cocaine. However, these are all psychoactive substances, and there are no safe drugs. All drugs are risky to a greater or lesser degree, depending on the type of drug, the potency of the drug, how it's administered, the context it's taken in. So, it would be wrong for me to be here saying, that a particular drug was safe. You have to think of it as a sliding scale of risk, and learn about what those risks are, because obviously it's safer not to use drugs at all, but people do choose to use drugs, and when they do choose to use whatever drug it might be, they need to understand what the risks are so they can keep themselves as safe as they can.
Okay, and as regards illegal drugs, we discussed crack cocaine, and you mentioned cocaine as well. Are there any other drugs that you illegal drugs that you come across in your work frequently, like?
Yeah, well, frequently it would be for our particular client group, it would be, as I mentioned, the street tablets, heroin, crack cocaine, alcohol. And then to a lesser degree, in terms of risk and such, cannabis and high strength cannabis. and then other tablets or powders as they're being sold. So over the years, we've known people to think that they're purchasing methamphetamine, but actually they were purchasing another drug, alpha PVP, which is a stimulant. So it all depends on the market and what dealers are selling at the time as well. But broadly speaking, we're talking crack cocaine, heroin, alcohol, street tablets. It's a cocktail of drugs, Darren. Unfortunately, there's which involves a lot of chaos then, in terms of behaviours and things.
The potency of cannabis nowadays is a lot stronger than 20 years ago, isn't it?
I believe, yeah. It's one of those areas which polarizes people about the beliefs around cannabis and whether it should be remain criminalized or whether it should be legalized. So prohibition versus legalization and the potency of it and the harms associated to it are part of that discussion. I think that I've talked about this before with you, I think, Darren, and I think that we should be decriminalising all drugs, including cannabis, and I do think that there should be a very serious consideration of the legalisation of cannabis. I think that should be discussed. It's happening in the US, it's happening in Canada, it's happening elsewhere. So I think Ireland does need to really have a very adult discussion about an honest discussion about cannabis and look at that in terms of legalisation. But definitely right now we should be, and there is a move by government under its health-led policy and under the National Drug Strategy to move to a health-led approach to the possession of drugs for personal use, so that people wouldn't be criminalised. And I hope that happens soon, because criminalising people for a health issue hasn't worked. And we've had prohibition since 1977 here in Ireland. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we do need to change what we're doing, and we do need to do it as soon as possible, really, because actually what we're doing isn't working.
Okay, I won't keep you much longer, Tony. You just said there that you'd like to see cannabis be decriminalised and then probably legalised as well. Would you be in favour of that for all illegal drugs, or just cannabis, or what's the story?
I think I should be clear. I think that all drugs should be decriminalised. So the response. So just to be clear to the listeners, prohibition is when all drugs a drug is prohibited under law, and you cannot be in possession of it, and certainly not dealing in a substance. Legalisation is when there is a regulated and controlled market. So like alcohol beverages, and that would be where people could go and purchase a substance over the counter. I don't really think that legalisation of drugs is going to happen anytime soon in Ireland. I think that the middle ground where prohibition hasn't worked and legalisation is unlikely is to decriminalise drugs. And decriminalisation is where you have the response to the possession of drugs for personal use is a health response, where people are offered help and support based on their needs. And it should be all the time, because every time someone is found in possession, they should be offered help. It doesn't mean that any behaviours or any crimes associated to that, so any violent crimes or acquisitive crimes, any theft, that would still be within the realms of the law, and dealing would stay in the realms of the criminal law. But the possession of drugs would not be a criminal offence for a certain amount of drugs. But just on the subject of cannabis, what I'm saying is that Ireland needs to have a grown-up discussion about the legalisation of cannabis. We need to talk about it, but that needs to happen, at a level, a societal level, engaging with government. And I think that that's something that is likely to happen. It is going to happen in the years to come. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll come back to you on that in the future, Tony. Hopefully, when there is a debate, and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We could talk about the states in America who have legalized cannabis and the statistics or whatever. I just have a couple more. Just have a couple more questions, Tony. You mentioned
sure.
You mentioned alcohol. A lot of your clients have problems with alcohol. I presume I assume you must be happy that the Public Health Alcohol Act came in a couple of years ago, are you?
Yeah, look, I mean, from a public health perspective, the new act puts an emphasis on, I think it just helps people realise the harms that alcohol causes. When you in your day-to-day life, you go in and you can see that, for example, that alcohol is separate, physically separate from groceries in shops. That in itself is a statement. You have to go through some doors and go into. It keeps it away from under 18-year-olds and all that sort of thing. Obviously, there's minimum pricing, which I think is yet to be implemented. And from a public health perspective, it's important for people to understand increasingly, and always people do understand, but always increasingly understand that alcohol is a drug, and there are many harms associated with alcohol. So yeah, I think the act was much needed.
Okay. I understand that the matter of supervised injection sentence, for instance, is something that still hasn't happened yet. Can you give me a bit of an update on this?
Yeah. Okay. So Merchants Key Island were chosen as the preferred provider by the HSE to deliver the fixed site supervised injection facility in Dublin. So it's the pilot, the first one, and the premises on Merchants Key in Dublin were identified there. Unfortunately, there's been significant delays caused by planning permission. So broadly, it was the planning permission was refused by On Board Plenorla. It was granted on appeal, and then there was a judicial review began about the process, the On Board Plenorla's own process. So it was the local school that had brought that case, the judicial review. There was a hearing over the summer, and there is another hearing in October. So it's I don't know when or what the outcomes will be, but those are the delays, the significant delays. Obviously, we're all very supportive of Merchants Key and getting the fixed site up and running, but I do think that the delays now are going on many years, and is unlikely to see the service up and running, in the next year or two, depending on the outcomes of judicial reviews and things. So I do think that in the meantime, we should be implementing mobile supervised injection facilities. That's not to take, that in no way takes away from the fixed site pilot service, but we really need to start thinking laterally about other options, and see where we might be able to get the model introduced to Ireland. There's a lot of problems with street-based injecting in Dublin city centre, where my office is. I could take people around and show them where people are injecting, very regularly all through the week. There's alleyways in the city centre. I think all alleyways essentially are used for injecting at some point during the week, and people are at risk. So I think it's important to look at how we might get this up and running collectively, the state and NGOs, and as I say, this is not to take away from the fixed site service at Merchants Quay, which would be great to see up and running. And I genuinely hope that the judicial review works out, and that Merchants Quay get the fixed site service up and running.
Okay, Tony, to come towards the end of our interview, are there any other areas or aspects of your work at the moment, Ana Liffey, that we have not discussed that you would like to tell our listeners about? And finally, if there's anyone listening to this interview who has a drug problem, would you have any advice for them?
Sure. Well, firstly, just to say that we're doing a lot of work, and this is really important to me to acknowledge the partnership approach that Ana Liffey always works with. So our team on the ground work very, very hard all the time to try and improve the situation for people that they work with. But we can't do that on our own. So it happens when we work very strongly with the HSE, Dublin City Council, with Dublin Regional Homeless Executive, and then all the other NGOs like Dublin Simon Community and Peter McVerry Trust and DePaul Island and Cool Mind Therapeutic Community, and the list goes on and on and on, and we're very, very grateful for all the partnership work. One of the groups that people may not realise that we work closely with is On Gardaí Corner, and there's a very important piece of work that we do with them, which is regular engagement and work with them around some of the most vulnerable people in Dublin, who the guards do recognise as having, predominantly health issues with regards to their addiction and such. And we do a case management piece, and we work with shared signed confidentiality with the client. We work with the guards on that, and with other agencies, obviously. But it's an important piece of work that we do with On Gardaí Corner and other agencies. And then, just in terms of if people are struggling with substance use and the risks that, and it could be themselves or a family member that they're worried about, I think the website to go to is drugs.ie, and you can go to drugs.ie and you'll find a directory of services there, where you can, depending on where you are, I appreciate this is an interview for a Dublin-based radio show, but I think that people could be listening from all over, anywhere in Ireland. So on that directory, you can have a look in your area and see what's available. So do go there and see what's available in your area. So that's drugs.ie. So have a look at that.